welcome back to my basement boatyard. This is Captain Boat Builder here with you, and today it's episode number 7, and we're going to call this one Laminating the AKAS. This is a process I haven't done before. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's a very interesting part of the build. So hope you enjoy it. We're going to do some lamination. Welcome back. That on my lovely 12-foot table. I've got new plastic. It's all cleared off and ready to go to the next phase. The next step is to cover the base. This is the base right here, this big curved piece. The next step is to cover it with plastic. And I just put the plastic on, it hangs off both sides, and you'll be seeing, I'll be using a lot more plastic, and the whole idea is to be sure that nothing sticks. The next step is to put sealing tape, packaging tape, on this edge right here of the smaller curving piece. And what I've done is I've taken the tape, put it on the top surface here, and put it over the edge like that. You can see it hangs over the edge. And this is done before this second level, this one, before it gets screwed down to the base plate. And again, everything I'm doing is just to make sure that all the glue, and there's going to be plenty of glue, doesn't stick anything to anything else. So now that I've got the edges taped, I'm going to be screwing this piece onto the base plate. So now the second layer of the form is screwed down and attached to the first layer. Can't really see it too well, but it's lined up with the back side right here where the plastic is coming out. And if you look at the front side here, you can see we've got plastic, so nothing's going to stick here. We've got sealing tape on this edge, so nothing's going to stick here. And there's going to be another layer. And so now we're going to attach the top, and that'll be the end of the mold, except for more tape. So now I've got the second layer of the form screwed down. That's this one here. So what we've got is 3. We've got the base down here, we've got plastic, we've got the first layer and the second layer, and they are screwed together and screwed into the base layer. You can see here that we've got the sealing tape right here. It goes underneath, it comes up, there's another layer that covers it here, and there's another layer that covers it here. So I got 3 layers of sealing tape taking care of this corner, and this surface. So that's going to keep the glue from getting onto anything. I wanted to show you here what the laminations look like. This is, of course, just a dry fit. What we have here is we have the first layer, which is a long piece, a full-length piece that's held together with the scarf joint. Then we've got alternating 8-foot pieces and 4-foot pieces, and you're going to have stacked butt joints like this where they alternate, and of course they would be pushed together. And then the top right here is another layer that is one single piece that was scarfed together. So if you look at the instructions, you can see how the layers are stacked on top of themselves, where all the butt joints line up, and the top laminate and the bottom laminate are one continuous piece. You can see that here in the directions. This is pretty much in the middle where the scarf joint goes. So as we stack these up, there'll be glue in between all of these layers, except no glue on the outside here and no glue on the outside here. We'll be pushing these together so that there'll be no space. They'll be clamped into the mold. And the manual says you can't wait too long. He said you can leave it in the mold for up to a week because you want to be sure that the epoxy has reached absolute full strength. Well, I can't tell you how pleased I am with the lamination project. It worked pretty much the way I expected that it would. As you can see, again, this is a clamp intensive exercise. I used 23 clamps, and I probably could have used more if I had them. what I find is that the closer you place the clamps together, the easier it is to get the bending. I started in the center, started right here, and started working out. There's the notch in the mold. Started working out from the center, and as you work out, you just do it slowly. Maybe you do some readjustment. I did have a friend help, a friend of mine, Dick Ensinger, lifelong friend and sailing buddy. It's definitely easier with two sets of hands. You work from the center and then you start working out to the edge, the ends, I should say. One thing that I did notice is that as these things bend, the spacing on the butt joints, there's the butt joints right there. As the, excuse me, as the materials bend, they separate just a little bit. And what I found is that by the time you get to this point where you're starting to clamp here and the butt joints are starting to separate, you can go to the end, you can go to the very end, and you can tap on whichever plank it is. You can tap on it with a hammer or a screwdriver or something, and even with all the glue, since you haven't started squeezing it from the middle as you go out, you can still tap those butt joints tight into place, just like this, and you can start squeezing the clamps where the butt joint is and where the curve continues, and it's a way to get the butt joints right into position without much trouble. As I've mentioned before in other videos, I spent a lot of time in the cleanup, wiping away any excess resin. The planks, even though I use the hammer on them a lot, you can see that they're not quite flush. I'm not quite sure why. They should be, but they're not quite. So this may be an opportunity for me to buy a small electric planer and plane them smooth. It's a tool that I don't have, so I'm looking forward to that. But it went pretty much as expected. I'm very pleased with the result. It's going to be in the mold here in the shaper for a week, and then I'll do the next one. And again, it really helps to have a second pair of hands. Well, folks, for those of you who thought it would never happen, AI has finally come to the world of small boat building. Here's Google. Here's an AI review of epoxy and how long it takes to fully cure. You may remember that I mentioned in the instructions, it talks about making the AKAS, putting the AKAS in the mold and leaving them in the mold for up to a week. It says a week is not too long to be sure that the epoxy reaches full strength, because this is a pretty high strength application. So here it is on Google. It's going to be dry to the touch in 24 to 72 hours, but requires 5 to 7 days for a full cure. Once again, we're leaving it in the mold for a week. Well, folks, we're making some real progress. Here is the second AKA that's cooking in the mold. It's got another 3 or 4 days to go. And here's the first one. We popped it out of the mold. Absolutely no problems. It didn't stick anywhere. All the plastic really worked. And what I'm doing now is I'm finishing it off. I started with this planer that I got on Amazon from a company called Wen. This is a small planer, and it worked just great because, as you can see here from the end, in spite of all the hammering that we did, still you can see here that these individual boards, individual pieces of wood, they don't quite line up. So you want to get them with a planer to get them completely flat. We were able to run these through on both sides and the top and the bottom, and cut right through the wood easily, and also cut right through the dried epoxy. So to me, the planer, the small planer, is the tool to use. 36 bucks on Amazon. And then after we did the planing, used the trusty router here to put a nice quarter round edge right here on all 4 sides. That worked out just fine. I'm in the process of coating it with epoxy now, and one thing that I've been doing It's just a little technique that might help you. You can see here that I've got the bottom half taped. So I'm only putting a coat of epoxy on the first half. Well, what this does is when the epoxy kind of has a tendency to run down the sides, it runs onto the tape, which you can pull off. And then you don't get big globs. Now what that means, and I also use the same technique for this piece of wood for varnishing, but what that means is you can only do half of it at a time. So it does increase the time, but you don't have to worry about runs and drips. Another thing, as a reminder, when you do this with epoxy, be sure and get that tape off after about 4 or 5 hours, because as I've said before, once it sets up, it's a nightmare to get it off. When you do varnish, you don't have to take it off right away. The varnish can be completely dry and the tape will still peel off just fine. So this is the beginning of probably 3 or 4 coats of epoxy to smooth out the surface and to seal the wood. I did want to show you one more thing that I'm doing. The AKAS, the curve in the AKAS, the curve does not quite match the curve in the deck of my little boat. So what I've got here is some small pieces of wood that I'm going to be using as shims, and the amount of correction that I have to do is quite small, and I'll probably wind up sanding almost all of this off, but I just want to be sure and have a nice smooth contact between the bottom surface of the AKA and the deck of my boat. So we're making real progress, and pretty soon I'll just be sanding and trying to figure out how to get these AKAS to match the curve of the deck. Well, folks, we're going to finish up this episode with just a final look at the AKAS. The one on the right has 4 coats of epoxy on it, and they've all been sanded with a block carefully in between each coat. And this is the base for the varnish. This gets the wood nice and smooth, and it also completely waterproofs it. I'll be varnishing into the future here on these AKAS, probably at least 5 or 6 coats. It's really boring, but I will have a shot for you in the next episode of the finished product. But this one that's closest to us is now finished as far as the epoxy is concerned. So again, thanks for your patience. Thanks for watching this episode, and I'll be continuing on with more varnish and more epoxy. So thanks again for watching. So long.